who will tell you what he's playing.
Yeah,
He makes no bones about it. You know he's playing Infect in Legacy. Chances are he might be playing Infect in Modern, and he's playing either Boss Sly or Blue Eye Heroic. He's not afraid to tell you. Beat him if you can. So far, nobody has. Here's a favorite hoplite.
What's fascinating about Justin's list is I was about to say the major cost of playing this list is the lands. You had to play a bunch of copies of the common lands that comes into play, gain 1 life lands from cons. Justin playing 0.
Yeah.
He's running a life game strictly off of Corsair Crewfix, Sorin, Siege Rhino, and Wingmate Rock, not messing around with any of those lands.
It's a Temple of Plenty. And again, this is a thing I think that happened a lot for this tournament for Tom. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about it. But if he's playing against people, there's a lot of green decks in this format, right? And this deck, it feels like it destroys green decks. This is a deck that keeps the mid-range decks in check. When I talked to Brad Nelson about it, he said, yeah, this is the kind of deck this format needed to keep these mid-range decks in check, to just beat them up and have to change what they're doing. And we saw that a little bit last week when Jeskai Heroic combo, which also sliced and diced its way through a lot of Corsair Crewfix decks. Here's a Windswept Teeth. Tarlton going to search up a land here, but this might do even a better job of it.
And for a while, that role was kind of being fulfilled by the Boss Sly decks. Yep. But as those decks adjusted, you started seeing Drowning Sorrows in people's sideboards. That card's very challenging for Boss Sly to beat. Drowning Sorrow does not matter very much against Blue White Heroic. Yeah, there'll be some draws where, you know, they go 1 drop, 2 drop, you get the Drowning Sorrow all the way. That looks great. But if this starts getting its creature enchantments online, Drowning Sorrow will not provide much defense.
There is a forest there for Tarlton. Let's see what his turn 2 play is going to be. And it's a Fleecemane Lion, so back to Ross we are going to go. Ross will draw a card. Don't have a great look just yet.
I think it was the one ordeal of Heliod.
See, he does have blue mana available. Not for this particular turn, it looks like his blue source for this game thus far is a copy of Tranquil Cove. That will come into play tapped. And it looks like the mana is basically online. Ordeal of Heliod does look to be the draw. There's the Cove. It's going to go up to 21. I'll see if he's got interest in casting a spell here. And he does. It is the Ordeal. That'll trigger Heroic on the favorite hoplite. It's 2-3. Now it's 3-4. And, well, the Seeker, well, that's bigger now, too.
Offering up the trade, I was interested to see if Tom was going to do this. And a huge success here if Justin just says no blocks.
Very quickly chose to not block as well. Maybe bigger plans for that Fleecemane line.
Well, if he's trying to go monstrous, might be a little slow for this sort of game.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Tarlton will untap and draw here, already at 12. It seems that what Ivan Jen figured out is what some other players have begun to figure out as well. Heroic plus prowess, very powerful. There is a Stance-Up Citadel. This is another copy of Fleecemane Lion. Back to Ross we were going to go. Number 4 on our Season 4 leaderboard. Already qualified for the Players' Championship. As he is a two-time invitational winner.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ordeal of Thassa. It's more counters. It's drawing cards. It's gaining 10 life. Seeker's a 3-3 as well, mind you.
Now I think if Justin didn't block last turn, well, I feel like he kind of needs to block this turn.
I would want to. I don't know if it's going to work. Defiant Strike says, no, sir. It's getting ugly out here.
Yep. And I think the turn, I'm not sure if Justin can win this game regardless, but the, choosing not to block last turn there's been some consequences for that action.
I would say so, yes. A bunch of damage is going to be dealt here. Hopefully Ross didn't miss the Heroic trigger on the favorite hoplite. There is the, it looks like he was reaching for a die. I may have missed the Heroic trigger, honestly. But he's so far ahead in this game, I'm not entirely sure it will matter.
Yeah, I hope the difference between a 7-8 and an 8-9 does not come back to haunt Tom.
There is a Siege Rhino. The big guy, well, not the biggest guy for once.
It's pretty big, but normally comes down on turn 4 and is the big kid on the block. But
I would be afraid of a human, well, that is unblockable now, but a human that can just straight up kill a Rhino and not care. As there is the Scry. Here is an attack for a whole bunch of damage. Little shoulder shrug action, and Tom Ross is going to win game number 1 here over Justin Tarlton. Ran him out of the gym there with Blue White Heroic, up a game over Obzon mid-range, what I have to imagine is one of Tom's better matchups.
I think so too, and I like that Tom there, even though attacking for lethal against an opponent who was tapped out, still resolved his Scry trigger.
Hey, it's never cocky.
Exactly.
He's just playing a normal game of Magic here. It's business as usual for the boss. As we take a look at Tarleton's sideboard, there's an Ajani Mentor of Heroes, 2 copies of Fens of the Foremost, 2 Doomway Giants, 2 Drowning Sorrows, 2 Elspeth Sun's Champion, 2 Erase, 2 Spirit of the Labyrinth, and 2 copies of Thoughtseize. There are some nice cards here. We'll get to the ones for the matchup in just a second, but Spirit of the Labyrinth is a card that you have mentioned. You felt people would start to work in their sideboards to combat Jeskai Heroic combo. And One thing that card doesn't do is it does not really combat this heroic strategy.
Yeah, it does. It gives you a little bit of game against Ordeal of Thassa, but that's very minor in the scheme of things.
Yeah. Now, as far as cards that we like here, I mean, Erase is okay. Elspeth is a little bit slow. There is the world that exists where, you can play Elspeth and minus it if there's a big creature out there. So it gives you a little bit of game against that. Drowned Sorrow is okay. Doomwake Giant is okay. Thoughtseize is, again, okay. But what you're going to find here are a lot of cards that are just okay.
Yeah, I think on the play, I like the Thoughtseizes and I like the Drowned Sorrows. I think Spirit of the Labyrinth is okay just as an early blocker, which Justin needs more of, but not a lot to like here. Like you said, a lot of okays, nothing great.
What do we see on the other side?
2 copies of Treasure Cruise, a second copy of Ordeal of Heliod, 2 copies of Erased, a 4th copy of Heliod's Pilgrim, 2 copies of Laguna Band Elder, an Aqueous Form, 3 Stubborn Denials, a Seeker of the Way, 2 copies of Ajani's Presence. I think the 2 copies of Treasure Cruise are going to be coming in here. I imagine it's for slower attrition and removal-based matchups. I think the additional copies of Ajani's Presence will come in here as well, and maybe the Stubborn Denials as well.
Some nice options, though, for Tom.
Oh, Tom's got big upgrades to make here. I think even the 4th copy of Heliod's Pilgrim is reasonable in a matchup that's, an opponent who's trying to out-removal you and play a longer game.
Time for our furry friend, Mr. Squirrel Confidant, to join the party. He is available here. You can get 2 free tokens when you do enter a Legacy Open. Don't forget about the deck box, the dice bag, the play mat, and the sleeves as well, 80 of them.
All available for purchase over at StarCGames.com, or if you come to any Open Series or Grand Prix that we're vending at, you can buy it there too.
Hey, next weekend, New Jersey, get your Squirrel Confidant products. They will be available there, StarCGames.com, as well as we do prepare for game number 2 here between Ross and Tarlton. It just seems like a great matchup. And, part of the reason I think that Tom has Treasure Cruise in the sideboard is because of a matchup like this that does get a little bit attrition-y at times. You could use 3 cards.
If Justin is going to beat Tom, it's by, running him out of resources and winning with Justin's leftovers, his Siege Rhinos and his Wingmate Rocks. So drawing 3 cards is really powerful if your opponent's trying to play a slower game.
Yeah. The Wet Heroic looks like it's on the map now after this performance by Ross. He's 8-0, he's up a game, might be 9-0, could be in double draw territory. Chances are we'll see him in the elimination rounds tomorrow. And what you got to like about this deck, it's well positioned in the metagame, and it's cheap.
The inclusion of Treasure Cruise is really funny to me in this deck. Not to say that it's bad, it seems very good for this matchup. Because this deck seems about as poorly suited to utilize a Delve card as possible.
Yeah.
It's creatures, lands, and creature enchantments, a couple of spells.
Yep.
And yet the rate on Treasure Cruise is good enough that even this sort of deck can incorporate it in the sideboard.
That's all part of a game plan. And that's what I like about Tom's deck the most. You take a look at the sideboard, you can see exactly what his thought process is, which is, hey, my deck is 75 cards, not 60. I think that's a deck building flaw for a lot of people is, I have my main deck and my sideboard. It's like, no, it's all one deck.
Yeah.
It's just, split into a bit of different packages, that's all. Tom's sideboard is an extension of his main deck. 3 Helios Pilgrims in the main, 1 in the board. 3 Seeker of the Way in the main, 1 in the board. All part of a plan.
He wants to be game 1 as flexible as possible because you don't know what you're going to be playing against. And post-board, you want to be as redundant as possible because you know what the stuff is that you want to go get with your Heliod's Pilgrim.
Tighten it up. Tarlton will be on the play here for game number 2. Down a game with his Abzan mid-range deck. Again, Johnny's Pride Mates here. 4 of those. Ways to gain life, course of Crewfix, Siege Rhino, Wingmate Rock Trigger. Can't forget about Soren Solemn Visitor as well. Temple of Silence, leave it on top as we are underway in game number 2. Ross with a Tranquil Cove. He'll be the one gaining life this time. He's up to 21.
And a lot of pressure on Justin here to get up his defenses very quickly because if we saw last game, he does not have a lot of time. Tom killed him on turn 5 through Fleece Mainline, Siege Rhino.
Temple of Plenty, a little scry action there. Ross with a second land into a Hero of Iroas. That gets the party started. Tarlton will draw a card. There's a copy of Spirit of the Labyrinth.
So he did bring it in both to block and to try to mess up Ordeal of Thassa.
The problem here for Justin is no 3rd land, and his deck is very mana hungry. He does have 24 lands in his deck along with 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid. No Elvish Mystics in his particular list. This is a card that's going to pick up in popularity.
I think so too. Very good answer to the Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck in all of its iterations. Can do a little bit of work against blue control decks because they have things like Jace's Ingenuity.
It might even be next week, too, in New Jersey for our Legacy Grand Prix.
Oh, and Legacy, forget about it. With Treasure Cruise in the format, I think you're going to see a lot of this card get cast.
There's our Dur of Heliod. Trigger, of course, for Heroic, and then the trigger for the Ordeal when it does attack. That's a 4/4 coming in the red zone right away, and it does cost just 1 mana due to the Hero of Iros. Tarlton's going to draw a card. Let's see if he's able to find a land. Looks like he found a copy of Llanowar Waste, so that's going to come into play. Now we can start rocking and rolling a little bit here.
Though if his plan here is to play 3 and 4 mana removal spells, this is the issue. You know, Tom's deck with 1 and 2 mana answers, the tempo of the game does not favor Justin this way.
There's a Fleece main line. He's coming into the red zone. Ross is going to go down to 17. Ross ready to untap if he's allowed to, and he is. He'll draw a card.
And you can just see the problem with the matchup here. Once Tom gets his shop going, Justin's creatures cannot brawl with Tom's. They're way too big, and they're getting evasion from various effects. So the only way for Justin to win the games is with removal spells. But that's really challenging to do when your opponent has 1 mana God's Willing and 2 mana Feet of Resistance against your 3 and 4 mana removal spells.
There's a copy of Erase. We'll take care of the Ordeal before Tom gets to attack. Now his hero is still a 4/4, so you can still safely attack through the Fleece main line. But Tarlton did not want him to gain 10 life and get another counter.
But again, not long-term solutions. Just needs to find removal spells and then cross his fingers and hope they're good.
There's the attack for 4. There's a Plains from Ross. Followed with a Battle-Wise Hoplite and just pass the turn back. Tom always careful to leave the necessary mana out to be able to do something else. Be it a God's Willing, be it a Feat of Resistance.
Exactly. He doesn't have to curve out that efficiently at this point. Justin wants to put more creatures on the table. Go right ahead. That's not going to be able to fight. He has to protect himself against removal spells, and as long as he does that, Justin's going to be hard-pressed to catch up.
Sylvan Caryatid joins the party. Tarlton's just going to pass the turn back, slow down a touch. So we'll go back Ross's way. He will draw a card. It's a Plains. He does have a copy of Heliod's Pilgrim in hand. First things first, he's attacking. Fleece main line going to jump in front of this. Ross going to go reaching for a trick. It's a copy of Feat of Resistance. It's a good trick. That'll put a counter on that because of Heroic. He also gets to, of course, put another counter there because of Feat of Resistance. Give his creature protection from whatever color he chooses. This, one of the best tricks in Khans of Tarkir Limited, making its way into Constructed.
Yep.
And now Ross is going to play his Heliod's Pilgrim, put the shields down, and they're going to go searching.
So a card that I can imagine doing some good work for an Obzon player in this matchup are cards like End Hostilities, like forget trying to cast removal spells, just sweep up the entire board. But Justin's build is a lot more aggressive, doesn't really afford him the ability to play many sweepers.
Ross going to go searching here. Looks like he's grabbing the Singing Bell Strike. A little interesting here.
Well, he can't get any of it. He really can't get any of his cantripping enchantments because of the Spirit of the Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. You see Tarlton taking a look at Singing Bell Strike. This is not a limited all-star. It's fine. Not a bad card.
Mixed opinions.
Okay, fair.
It ranges from very good to unplayable.
Yep.
I've heard it from people I respect.
Yeah, the full spectrum.
Yes.
Constructed all-star, though.
Constructed all-star.
Yes. Singing Bell Strike being searched up there from Heliod's Pilgrim. It's basically a pacifism with all that text. It's just a way for Tom to continue giving the beatdowns.
Yep.
That's all it is. So that's what he searches for with Heliod's Pilgrim. Tarlton will draw a card. As you mentioned, he can't get an Ordeal of Thoughts or anything that's really useful because of Spirit of Labyrinth being in the way.
So might as well check a blocker.
Yep. Llanowar Waste's going to come in. If you're Tom right now, you're just hoping your opponent doesn't have a card like End Hostilities.
But even then, it's bad. It's certainly bad for Tom, but, you know, it's a lot of Justin's own board, too.
A couple of Pride Mates here. Pass the turn back. Ross probably knows what he's up to now.
Gaining life. Some form or another.
Absolutely. Singing Bell Strike looks a little worse now as far as the tutor target is concerned. But as you mentioned, for Tom, his creatures are always just going to be so big. Though, to be fair to a Giant's Pride Mate, it has a card that can actually keep up with these heroic creatures.
Exactly, and Tom hasn't seen these cards yet. I think, you know, in retrospect, maybe he wishes he had gotten an Aqueous form because this turn played out pretty poorly for him. But with the information he was working with at the time, I think getting a Singing Bell Strike was totally reasonable.
Here's an attack. These creatures have some interest in blocking. Looks like damage is going to be exchanged. Some creatures are going to die. That Sylvan Caryatid is also going to die. One thing that's tough when you're playing against Tom, we saw this in his match against Reed Duke at the Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey. You don't know if he's bluffing you or not.
Yep. Might as well play like he has nothing, because if he's got tricks, you're probably not beating him anyway.
Favorite Hoplite comes down to replace the Battle-Wise Hoplite. Here's a Temple of Silence from Tarlton. I'll take a look at the top card of his deck. Got to keep that thing Bellstrike in mind if you're Justin. Is there anything he can even do about it, I suppose, is the question. Here's a Siege Rhino. He's going to gain 3. And also that Pride Mate's going to grow a little bit. Ross going to lose 3. He's down to 14. You see Tarlton go up to 10. There's a die, of course, for the Pride Mate trigger. Back Ross's way we're going to go.
It's pretty juicy seeing Bellstrike target, however.
So we're going to slow things down here just a little bit.
Looks like he has to take a point of damage.
Yep.
He only has 2. He only has 2 lands that produce mana without taking damage. So, no choice.
As you mentioned, not a bad singing Bellstrike target. And looks like he may cash it in. And it only costs 1, of course, due to the hero being out there. Time to attack with everybody. Tom forcing through damage now.
Curious to see if Tom even has a trick.
Yeah.
Or if he's just doing this to do it.
Looks like 2, 3, 4, 5 damage going to come across. Bye-bye favorite Hoplite. Replacement Battle-Wise Hoplite. Pass the turn back.
He has succeeded in getting just into the range where now the hero is lethal.
Few people do it better with an aggro deck than Tom Ross.
Yeah.
Ross happy to pass the turn back over to Tarlton. Tarlton is going to attack.
Whoa!
Well,
Can't imagine Tom blocking.
I'm on the search for end hostilities here. What could he have? If you're Tom, that's what it feels like at least.
Yep. I don't think Tom should chump here, even if it's an end hostility as a follow-up here.
Yeah, and he shrugs his shoulders and he says, all right, I'll take it.
Normally, attack like this means a sweeper, but I think it's too bad for Tom to chump if it turns out Justin just had something else in his hand.
Yep. And it's a Wingmate Rock. There is certainly something else, and that's what it is. So a couple of 3 or 4 flyers are going to join the party, and now Ross has got some real work to do here. A quick draw.
And I think if that's Heliod's Pilgrim, I think that's a kill. Because if he has an Aqueous Form in his deck, that'll do it.
And I think he just checked. There is the Pilgrim. He's going to go searching. Does he have an Aqueous Form in his deck? He's quickly searching. Stratus Walk is 1. Perhaps he doesn't have an Aqueous Form anymore.
I mean, he may have sided out against a deck with a lot of removal, I guess. And it looks like that's where we're at. Now, it's still good for him to be able to get Ordeal of Thassa because he can put this on the Battle-Wise Hoplet. He has 2 4-power creatures at that point. Justin just has to double chump block.
2 lethal attackers.
Exactly. Yep. So this is not, even though Aqueous Form would be better here, this is not bad for Tom.
And because Spirit of the Labyrinth is no longer in play, this actually works out okay for him. Ordeal of Thassa, kind of the glue that's holding it together here for Ross's deck. Super important card. One of the only ores that he has 4 of.
It's been really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been just trigger heroic, draw 2 all day long.
There's a trigger heroic. Scry. Kept it on top real fast. Here's the attack. He even gets some free points in there. Yeah, he's got to get that free point in with the Helios Pilgrim. He has to block both the big creatures, does Tarlton. As he's at 4. Every point matters in a deck like this.
And you can see Justin there. He thought that Wingmate Rock was going to let him crawl back in this game, and you can see him make the, all right, I guess I double chump block.
Yep.
I guess you're 2-mana creatures with my Wingmate Rock.
And I take 1? Come on. Tom says, Siege Rhino, you stay there. You're not going anywhere. Stansep Citadel going to come into play. And now Johnny's Pride Mate is back on defense. Ross going to draw a card. He kept it on top very quickly. It's another copy of Ordeal of Thassa. That's going to go over here now. Trigger there. Attack step here. Don't mind if it do, as far as drawing 4 cards is concerned.
Sure.
Hit 1. The boss will draw 2. hit 2. The boss will draw 2. Blocker there. Removal spell here. Looks like the answer is an attempt. That's a God's willing, and that is going to do it. Tom Ross going to win this match over Justin Tarlton. The boss, the two-time invitational champion, is 9-0.